Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devu Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Badram Pashye Vishnuyama Devaha, Badram Pashye Mayakshabiryajatraha, Sthirairangai Tuštuvagam Swastanobihi, Vyashema Deva Hitam Yadayuhu, Swastina Indro Vruddashravaha, Swastina Pusha Vishwavedaha, Swastina Starksho Arishtanemihi, Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadhatu, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome to the second session of Mandukya Karika. In today's session, we continue our study of Mandukya Karika covering mantra 5 and 6 along with Karikas 1, 2 and 3. We have with us Dr. Kiran, Dr. Komal Prasad, Dr. Sundar, Dr. Sandhya Ravi and Srimati Indumati explaining today's verses. Our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, will lead the session with his insights, thereby facilitating a deeper understanding. Before we begin today's mantras, let us quickly recap the mantras studied in the previous class, and Dr. Anupama Shetty will help us recall. Over to you, Anupama ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Mandukya Upanishad, a recap of mantras 1 to 4. Mantra 1 said, Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam, and mantra 2, Sarvam hi etad brahma, ayam atma brahma, soyam atma chatushpat. The message conveyed in mantra 1 is, Omkara is the name of Brahman. Idam sarvam Om iti etad aksharam. Om is the essence of the Vedas, which is the substratum of the creation. What aspect of creation? Bhutam bhavat bhavishyat iti sarvam. Everything that ever existed, exists, and could possibly exist in time, meaning the entire Vyavaharika Prapancha. Yet chanyat trikalatitam tadapyonkara eva. If there is anything beyond time, that Kala Atita Vastu is also Omkara. And what is that Kala Atita Vastu? Brahman, the consciousness principle. Therefore, Omkara inquiry is inquiry into everything, inquiry into Brahman, because Omkara is Brahman. The Upanishad says Omkara is the name of Brahman. Both Omkara and Brahman have 4 components each. The A-U-Ma, the variable Vachyartha of Omkara, the Virat Hiranyagarbha Antaryami, the variable Vachyartha of Brahman, by disregarding the variable and equating the Lakshyarthas alone, that is by Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana, we see the Amatra of Om is now the same as Nirguna Brahma. Remember, Lakshyartha of Om is not the Shabda Om, but the silence that follows, the Turyam Amatra. Mandukya Upanishad says, every object is the artha or meaning of a name. Let's understand this very carefully. Every object is the artha or meaning of a name. What does this imply? It means that the object has no existence apart from its name. And what is the result of this? The entire world of objects has now been resolved into just the meaning of words. Vacharambanam vikaro namadheyam. We may wonder, what's in a name? Everything in time and space has a name, and all names are modulations of sound. And any name or sound originates from Om. How so? The sound Om, A, U, Ma, and the silence includes the entire range of all possible words that one could possibly phonate. The essence of mantra 1 and 2 combined now is the entire universe is equated to Omkara. Omkara is equated to Brahman, and I, the consciousness, am equated to Brahman. What is this Brahman? Upanishad answers with a Mahavakyam, Ayam Atma Brahma means Brahman is Omkara, which is Nirguna Turiyam, which is I, the consciousness. Analyzing the Mahavakyam, Ayam Atma Brahma, which means Brahman is Atma, the self, or I, the consciousness. Notice the word Ayam, which means this. It indicates very intimate or aparokshataya upalabdhamana. So according to mantra 2, everything is Brahman, sarvam hi etad Brahman, Brahman is Atma, I am Atma Brahman, therefore everything is Atma. Soyam Atma Chatushpat. Inquiry into everything is inquiry into Atma, Sarva Vichara, Atma Vichara. Combining 1 and 2, once again we say Omkaragnya Sarvagnya Bhavati, Atmagnya Sarvagnya Bhavati, which means Omkara Vichara and Atma Vichara are essentially Sarva Vichara alone. Mantra 3 is the beginning of Atma Vichara. Soyam Atma Chatushpat. This Atma has 4 padas. Chatushpat means Chat Varaha Pada Yasya Saha. Pada here could mean a quarter, leg. It could mean aspects, expressions of facets. Atma has 4 facets, Chatushpat Atma. Its 4 aspects are, first, Stula Atma of Jagrat Avastha with its corresponding Pramata, the knower, and Prameyam, the known. Second, the Sukshma Atma of Swapna Avastha with its own corresponding Pramata, Prameyam, the Karana Atma of Shushupti Avastha with its Pramata and Prameyam. Finally, the Turiya Atma, which is Pramatra, Prameya, Vilakshana. Of these 4, only Turiya Atma is Satya, the rest are Mithya Nama Rupas. Now, let's understand this Mantra 3 with the help of these figures. Mantra 3 we see describes the Prathama Pada, which is called Stula Atma. Stula Atma bifurcates into Pramata and Prameyam of the Jagrat Avastha. This is the first Pada. Here, I, the consciousness, am seen through Jagrat Avastha, and I am the Jagrita Sthana. Associated with Stula Nama Rupa, I appear as Jagarita Pramata with Yashti Nama Rupa, the micro, and my other aspect is Jagarita Prameyam, the Samashti Nama Rupa, the macro. Continuing with this picture, we see the previous slide, please. Yeah. We see that the Vyashti is the knower Pramata and the Samashti is the knowable Prameyam. So this knower I, called the Bahish Prajna, with consciousness turned outwards through the Prapancha, through the Pancha, Jnanendriya and Karmendriyas. So how do I contact this external world? Eko Navivimshati Mukaha, with the 19 centers of interacting, the 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas, the 5 pranas, Manah, Buddhi, Chittam and Ahankara. Therefore, I'm called Stula Bhuk, the experiencer of the gross universe, or Vishwa, the Pramata of the Jagrat Prapancha. Also, I am the Jagrat Prapancha, the Prameyam also. I appear as the sun, moon, stars, etc. with Samashti Nama Rupa. Therefore, I am called Vaishwanaraha, Virat Ishvara, Vishwarupa Ishvara, or Saptanga Ishvara, which is the Lord with 7 cosmic limbs. Because my head is the heaven, my eyes are Surya, my breath Vayu, mouth Agni, body space, bladder ocean, my feet are the earth. Moving on to Mantra 4. This mantra explains the Dvitiya Pada, or the second Pada, which is called the Swapna Sthana. Here, the I am obtained in the Swapna Avastha. I am associated. Can you go to the picture, please? The next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is the I obtaining in the Swapna Avastha. I am associated with Sukshma Nama Rupa, or mental projections, Vasanamaya Nama Rupatvat. As Sukshma Atma, I bifurcate myself again into Swapna Pramata with Vyashti, Sukshma Nama Rupas, and the Prameyam with Samashti, Sukshma Nama Rupas. The Swapna Pravata is called Taijasa. The Swapna Prameya is called Hiranyagarbha. Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha together form the Sukshma Atma of the Dvitiya Pada. My mind here is Antaprajna because it is turned inwards. I don't contact the external world. So, what is the world that I experience? The internal world or the dream world, Vasana Janita world. And what are the instruments? Again, Eko Navi Vimshita Mukhaha, the dream organs. So, through dream sense organs, dream sense objects are experienced. And these sense organs are not made of Panchabhutas, but my own thoughts, my own vasanas. Therefore, they are called praviviktam or sukshmam. Therefore, I am pravivikta bhuk or the sukshma prapancha bhukta. I am Taijasa Vyashti Drishtya. I am Hiranyagarbha Samashti Drishtya. This is the second pada of myself, the Sukshma Atma. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnaneka Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. All our knowledge has come from Dakshinamurti himself, the Adi Guru. Whenever we refer to the Adi Guru, our immediate reference goes to our Guru, Swami Paramarthananda, who has made the impossible possible to help us to understand these difficult Upanishadic mantras. And how do you refer to your Guru, who's none other than Dakshinamurti? Pranavarthaya, the one who represents Pranava or Om. Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye, one who is a representation of pure knowledge, one who is Nirmala, absolutely pure, Prashantaya, who is beyond Shanti and Ashanti. When you are beyond Shanti and Ashanti, that means when even Ashanti does not disturb you, such a person is my Guru, who is none other than Sri Dakshinamurti. Now, this is another beautiful Omkara prayer. There are few prayers which should be our everyday prayer. Om Nama Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye. I have told the story before, but sometimes repetition helps. Why do I repeat these stories? Because when you repeat these stories, your understanding deepens and hopefully you will remember. That is why I always say, if you hear a story, share the story to somebody else. But in the process of telling the story, some deeper insights will come into our mind. All right. There is a story about Subramanyam, Lord Subramanyam. Lord Subramanyam got certain insights into the Omkara. And he was so excited. And when he was excited, now he goes to his father and asks about Omkara. Not that he did not know, but he had done a lot of homework on it. So his father says, go to Lord Brahmaji, who is the Lord of all the Vedas. He knows everything. So he goes to Lord Brahma and asks him about Omkara. He comes back to his father, not so satisfied. Now, so then he says, I have got some insights I want to share. And he says, okay, please go ahead and tell me. He says, if I have to tell you, I have to be the teacher. So as a teacher, I have to sit on a higher pedestal and you have to sit below. And Lord Shiva, who is absolutely egoless, Ashutosh, he agreed. But Goddess Parvati would not allow the Lord of the universe to be on a lower pedestal. So she found a way out. She said, okay, you carry him. And when you carry him, he goes a little higher than you. And he can share whatever he wants to share into your ear. And this is what Lord Subramanyam had to share to Lord Shiva. He says, Om is Brahma, Om is Vishnu, and Om is Shiva. Om is the creator, Om is the sustainer, Om is the resolution. Now, a quick recap about what we said. Dr. Anupama has already done it. We are studying the Mandukya Upanishad, which belongs to Atharva Veda, and one meaning of the word Mandukya means it is a frog. Among all the Upanishads, it is certainly the smallest. No Upanishad has only 12 verses. And in 12 verses, if the whole teaching has to be there, it is called a Sutra Bhuta. That means each of these verses are packed Upanishad. Lord Rama is telling Hanuman in the Muktiko Upanishad, Mandukya Eka Eva Alam. Alam means enough. Mandukya alone is enough. But if you have to study Mandukya, you have to study all other Upanishads because only then it becomes meaningful. Many centuries ago, there was a great teacher called Gaudapadacharya. Gaudapadacharya gave not really a commentary, but a certain elaboration on the Mandukya. And in today's classes, you will be listening how so beautifully he summarizes the whole Upanishad in these various Karikas. Since then, because these Karikas are so poetic, so crisp, so meaningful, and it helps you to understand Mandukya, which is extremely Sutra Bhuta, very packed. It has now become a tradition not to study Mandukya Upanishad of 12 verses, but to study Mandukya Karika. What is the difference between the Upanishad and the Karika? Now, in the Upanishad, you study 12 verses one after the other. In Mandukya Karika, it is not so. We will study a few verses and then you have a few Karikas. And then again, the Upanishadic verses and then a few Karikas. That is how it will go on. This will be. Now, the first part is the Agama Prakarana. The Agama Prakarana contains the entire Upanishad admixed with various Karikas. So we have 12 plus so many Karikas that make a total of 29 verses, Upanishads plus Karika. But then there is one mantra, the seventh mantra, which we will study in the next class, which is supposed to be the best among all the Upanishadic verses. Nantat prajnam na bahish prajnam. And in that there is one word which says prapancha upashamam, that the world is not so real. Extremely difficult to believe that the world is not real. So Gaudapadacharya gives 38 Karikas to tell you Vaitatya, that the world is Vitata. Now, when you greet somebody and you want to bless somebody, and somebody has come, I have an examination to go, please bless me. You will say, Tathastu, may it come true, may it all go well. Vitata is the opposite, not real. Vaitatya is the abstract form of that word, Vaitatya. That means this whole world is not so real. You have 38 Karikas. One of the most interesting part and the most difficult part is the Vaitatya Prakarana. And if we go to the Vaitatya Prakarana, it can transform our understanding. Now, if everything is unreal, what is real? So he takes 48 verses to say, you are real. The seer, the one who's observing, the one who's listening, you are real. And finally, we have 100 verses on what is called Alata Shanti Prakarana. I will explain later when the time comes. We are in the Atharva Veda, and the Atharva Veda has got a very beautiful Shanti Pata, which essentially means whatever I see, whatever I hear, let it be auspicious. May my limbs be strong as long as I live. I pray to 4 Devatas, to Lord Indra for mental strength, to Lord Pusha or the sun for intellectual strength, for Lord Garuda Tarksha to give me physical well-being, and to the Lord Brihaspati to give me spiritual well-being. We discussed, Dr. Anupama just told us about Om is everything. Om is only a name. When you name Brahman, the name of Brahman, the ideal name for Brahman is called the Pranava, is Om. The name is called Abhidhana. The one that is named of Brahman is Abhidheya. Normally, the word and the meaning are divergent. When I say the word love and what love is are so different. Just like the word fire is a simple word. On the other hand, the meaning fire is something that burns. So therefore, in the science of phonetics, they describe four terms. Vaikari, when I speak loudly. Madhyama, when it is in the form of a whispering. Pashyanti, which is just a thought. And para, even before the thought arises in the seed form. It is said, as we go from para, pashyanti, madhyama, vaikari, there is a divergence between the word and the meaning. That means as you come closer and closer, the word and the meaning becomes one and the same. But as far as Omkara is concerned, at all times, the word and the meaning are one and the same. The second mantra, which we studied already, is a Mahavakya, where the word Om means everything. Om means Brahman. And Mandukya, the frog, jumps to say, I am Atma Brahma. This, what I call me, closest to me, is none other than Brahman. This Brahman, for discussion purpose, for Vyavahara, can be considered under four aspects. We just finished Kathopanishad, where Nachiketa asks Lord Yama, or he's given three boons, and he asks this question, please tell me something beyond Dharma and Adharma. Anyatra Dharma, Anyatra Adharma. Something beyond the three periods of time, something beyond cause and effect. And the answer that he gives you, that goal which all the Vedas talk about, for which a lot of people do so much austerity, practice brahmacharya, study the Vedas, and that is called Om. Sarva Veda Yat Padam Amananti. That means the goal of all the Vedas. Tapasmi Sarvam Cha Yat Vadanti. You do so much penances, so many sadhanas. For what purpose? Yat Ichanti Brahmacharya Charanti. You take a life of sannyasa. Tatte Padam Sangrahena Bravimi Om Iti. In brief, I will tell you what that is. O Nachiketa, in answer to your question, that is Om. Fortunately, we are studying that which she is asked for. And then the next verse immediately he says, the greatness of Omkara. Yetad hi eva aksharam brahma. This akshara, this syllable is Brahma. Both saguna and nirguna. Yetad eva aksharam jnatva. If you are able to get this, you will get all that you possibly want. And then he continues, Etad alambanam shreshtam. This symbol is the highest. Etad alambanam param. Another word to say the highest. Etad alambanam jnatva. Supposing you're able to understand Omkara, Brahma loke mahiyate. You will be adored. You will be worshipped in Brahma Loka, the highest lokas. Yes, Chandasam Rishabho Vishwarupa. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, Shiksha Valli, there is a mantra which says, of all there is in the Chandas, in the Vedas, the best is Omkara. Now, Mandukya means frog. Now, in the rainy seasons, if you have a water body, you will hear that croaking noises of the frog. And all the Upanishads for an unawakened person is like a wake-up call. Uttishtata Jagrata. It is extremely disturbing. Mandukya tells you something very disturbing. Everything that you see is not so real. That is why it is very difficult to accept, but then you can't ignore it. How long can you ignore the croaking of the frog? This mantra is not for scholarship. This Upanishad is to understand my true nature, to understand the true nature of the world around me. I will conclude my introduction with two stories. All of us have been through dreams. Sometimes we've been through a nightmarish dream. You may even scream, and if there is somebody around you, they will wake you up. And suddenly you realize it was all a dream. Your heart is pounding. Your experience was real, but everything was a creation of my own mind. I created that problem. I suffered that problem. And in my dream, I was the creature and I was both the creator. The moment I wake up, what is the awakening? I discovered that the creature in the dream was not aware that you were the creator of your dream. Swami Paramarthananda's one effort is help us to move from understanding that I am a creature to I am a creator. This is the jump that Mandukya helps us to give. One more story. This story I have told many times, but I want you to share this story with others so that it will make a deeper understanding for you. Maitri, the wife of the great sage Yajnavalika, when he took sannyas, she also took sannyas and she became his student. And being a former wife, she had the ability to ask him all difficult questions. One day he says, "Stop, now you answer my questions." And he asked her a few questions. "Where are you?" And she says, "I'm there in your ashram." "Where is the ashram?" "In Karnataka." "Where is Karnataka?" "In India." "Where is India?" "In the world." "Where is the world?" "In space." "Where is the space?" "In my mind." Then he says, "Where are you going out, out, out?" This whole world, which seems so tangible and so real, is there in our mind. And where does the dream happen? In our mind. As we go through Mandukya, you will understand one thing. The so-called waking world is not very different from the dream world. And we have to wake up from Jagrat, from Swapna, from deep sleep to Turiya. We will see the next mantra. Dr. Kiran, please.
Namaste. Hari Om. Gurubhyo Namaha. As Sir has already told, Mandukya Upanishad is one of the most difficult Upanishads to learn. It is also equally or more difficult to teach. But when we go through Mandukya Upanishad, there are some of the things which becomes very, very clear to us, and it is expected that we get a clear. Because this deals with world and the understanding in a very different way. It is not dealt with any other Upanishad. It deals with what is called as different states. Anupama has told very beautifully, the Chatushpad means it is not 1, 2, 3, 4. It is a facet. It is a way of looking the same thing in a different way. To put it simply, like if you are talking about wave, you're talking about river, you're talking about sea, ocean, ultimately you are talking about water. And similarly, when you're talking about bangle, jewelries, etc., ultimately you're talking about gold. Similarly, when you're talking about different states in time, which is described in Mandukya, you are essentially talking about one thing in a different facet. And what is that we are learning? And Sir has already told that Om, whether you are expressing as a word or whether it is not expressing as in silence, it means same. Similarly, the facets Chatushpad or Turiya, whether we are experiencing or not experiencing, whether we are expressing or not expressing, it's same how it is. Previously, we learnt about waking state and we learnt about dream state. Whether it looks seemingly to us as two different things. This is what, when we are, Upanishad is describing time, it is not describing in past, present, and future because these are all formed. It is describing in a states. It is because that has a state of being. That is why this Upanishad is so beautiful. Let us go into the Upanishad proper. Yatra shupto na kanchana kamam kamayate na kanchana swapnam pashyati tat sushuptam. Shushuptasthana ekabhibhutaha pragnana gana eva anandamaya anandeho bhuk cheto mukaha pragnana tritiya padaha. Most important, first is what is Sushupti? He describes beautifully in a negatives, because Brahman cannot be described as anything. When we describe a word, anything using a word, that becomes restrictive. Similarly, when we are describing like Brahman inspired as this, that, and all, it becomes restrictive. That's why when we come to the all important mantra, na anta bahishpragna na upayata, he describes it as in negatives. Similarly, this Sushupti is described in negatives. That is why this verse is very important and we need to learn. Sushupto means ignorance. That means this is a state in which no knowledge is there. Purely Sushupti means absence of knowledge. That is, we are not aware of anything. This is a state of it. Here, he is beautifully described once more. It is a state in which there is no desire. This is very important, because when we get a state of desire, when there is mind, when there is sense organs, when there is a contact with the sense organ, the objects, and there is some filtration and clash with it, this is when desire, hatred, etc. come. Whereas in Sushupti, there is nothing of this kind. This is what is Sushupti. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. In deep sleep, Atma, that is associated with deep sleep state, and hence it is called as third quarter. Here what happens, all the pluralities are merged into it, is into an undifferentiated form. When there is a differentiation, it leads to some interpretation, and that leads to sadness, happiness, anger, etc. But here it is in a undifferentiated form, and that's why it causes happiness. To learn it, to make it simple, we will learn in three different forms. That is, one is object, one is kosha, and the third is happiness, ananda. All three are described in this verse. So let us take it one by one. Object, what is there in Sushupti? There is no sense of object. But remember, it is not that there is no object, there is no nothingness here. This is, objects are resolved into a undifferentiated form. That is, it is just like how in a puzzle, or you put everything and make it into a laddu or round sphere, you don't know what is formed into it. Just like a clay, you don't know what form it is, but it can be formed into many forms. Or like a toy, we see, you put it into a box, it will be like a box. As soon as you open, it springs like a jar. So similarly, it is not nothingness. All the things are resolved into something which cannot be experienced. That is why we get happiness out of it. This is what he says, undifferentiated form. So here, objects and experiences are resolved into one thing. That is why our problems also are resolved. That's why we get an ananda. That is why when we get up from sleep, we say we are happy. But remember, this is in a potential form. And once this karma actually comes into fructation, we get up and all the things which is there springs up. Next slide, please. So what is the kosha which is associated with deep sleep? This is called as Anandamaya kosha. One secret I will tell you. Just like Pranamaya kosha, Annamaya kosha, etc., there is no Anandamaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha here simply means unawareness. That is ignorance. There is no knowledge here. That is why this is called as Anandamaya kosha. That's why it is expressed in different kala, desha. And that's why we are blissfully ignorant of what is happening. The body which is responsible for it is otherwise called as Karana Sharira, or causal body. Next slide, please. So here, this is made up of, as I told, avidya, and the components we can have. Even the subtle gross body is there, but is in the potential or seed form. It functions as a storehouse of both subtle and gross body, and its nature is eternal, but it is not evident even to myself. Next slide. So when we say ananda means it is so, we think that this sushupti gives happiness. No, similar to what we have learned mind, because it is associated with some things, in potential form, this happiness is also not real happiness. This is also a borrowed happiness, because this Sushupti, this Anandamaya is also taken from the real Atma, and the Atma itself is the real Ananda. As you see in this chart, the Atma will be associated here in the ignorant form or eternal bliss. The same Atma later on becomes mind, and then it becomes reflected happiness. So all these three Anandas, whether it is in Sushupti, whether it is in dream state or in waking state, are all reflected of the real Ananda. In dream state, what happens is the Ananda or whatever is the perception is projected into the mind only internally. That is why we experience only the internal mind happiness, whereas in a waking state, it is projected outside into the world. So what we see, the others are also able to see and perceive. Next slide, please. So who is the experiencer? Next slide. Who is the experiencer in this deep sleep state? There is an, as I told, experiencer who is experiencing the potential form. He is called as prajna. What he is experiencing is not original happiness or not original happiness. Why? Because it is reflected through Anandamaya Kosha. That is why it is called as Koshananda. The reflected happiness is temporary, because as soon as we wake up, we experience the world and its happiness and sadness. Whereas the original happiness is permanent. The reflected happiness is subjected to gradation. Oh, I slept well. I didn't sleep that well. Whereas the real happiness is not subject to the reflected happiness is experienced, because it is subject to pramata, prameya, etc. And it is objectified, and it can be projected, and hence it is experienced. Whereas the original Ananda is through everything, but it is not experienced. It is our own nature. This is a very important thing. The fifth difference is the Atma can, the reflected happiness can be obtained by either having an object, or by, you say, I don't want that object, either by detachment, sannyasa, or by having it. Whereas whether object is there or not there, the real Ananda is always there. Next slide, please. So we talked about Sushupti. We talked about what is the object, what is the quotient one. Now let us see, as I promised before, these are not 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are linked. How it is linked? It is linked here in the deep sleep state. The waking state does not go automatically into the dream state. In between, there is a deep sleep state. Again, when you are waking up from deep sleep, when dream state, we don't suddenly go into waking form. In between, there is the sleep state. That is why in the subsequent verses, when we are telling the waking world is not Brahman, the sleeping world is not Brahman, the Ubayato, that means in between, that is the Sandhya Kala or the world in between, is also not Brahman, because it is everything is in this. That is what he is coming to tell. Next slide. And also we can divide into micro and macro. So macro is me. When I am experiencing this, it is called as prajna. When the macro world or the macro experience is there, some collection of it, it is called Ishvara or Antaryami. That means, next slide please. I will explain to it, and it will be explained in the next verse also. See, imagine I am a prajna. I am X. In the macro world, all this similar to prajna, there is collection of it. That is X, Y, B, STA, etc. All this is put into one, and it begins. When it resolves into a pralaya, all these things are not visible. It is in a potential, some potential form like a round seed. When the new world begins again, it does not begin new. The same XYB reappears, and then the X comes with whatever prarabdha is there and appears. That is why just because the pralaya is there, my worries or my karma, whatever I've done, is not resolved. It again comes back. That is why this moksha jnana is very important. Next slide, please. So to sum up, the difference between the Ananda Maya or short-lived or Sadananda is, we are not aware of it only when we are coming out of it. That is, when I slept and came out to a waking state, I can say I am slept. But the real Ananda is there throughout all these states. And the pratibimba, we needs a pramana, we need an effort to it, we need a body to say I have slept well. Whereas in a real ananda, this also is not reflect. This is a reflected state, and the other one is original. Next slide, please. In short, this deep sleep state is running through the waking state and in the uh, dream sleep, and is responsible or is built on that. Whereas this deep sleep state or anandamaya kosha or reflected ananda as we call, that also is resting on this fourth state, what is called as turiya. What is turiya? We will learn it later. Just to recapitulate, this deep sleep is not turiya. You may get confused because it is eternal. Why can't it be turiya? Because here ego is still there. Though it is very small, it is always there. That is why when we get up, we are the same person. And it is it in potential form. It is not formless. It is subject to death and pralaya, as I explained before. And after above, the whole world again reforms and I again rebirth. So only by understanding turiya and the fourth, and we get this moksha. And to have a link, this deep sleep is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiran, for a nice explanation of a very difficult mantra. So there are two mantras here, mantra number 5 and mantra number 6. Mantra number 5 is describing the sleep state from an individual. What is this state of sleep? The state of sleep is different from the waking sleep and the deep sleep. In the state of sleep, yatra sukta na kanchana kamam kamyati. There is no desire whatsoever. Na kanchana swapnam pashyati. There is no dream also. Then what do you experience at that state? You experience a homogeneity. In pathology, we call it undifferentiated. From there, you cannot make out what it is. It is all resolved into one. But there is a feeling of ananda. That is why whenever we sleep, we always are experience happiness. For one reason, we don't have any sense of limitations. Because whenever our mind is there, there is always limitations. In sleep, there is no limitation whatsoever. Dr. Kiran explained it, but there is one important word to remember, what is called Cheto Mukhaha, which means the doorway of experience. It is elaborated again in the Karikas. That means you, from the waking state, you do not directly go into the dream state. You go through deep sleep. And from the deep sleep, you don't go straight to the waking state. There is the Cheto Mukhaha. There is the corridor. That means even from dream, you come back to deep sleep and then you come to a waking phase. Now, this door can be a two-way door. That means it leads to the waking. It leads to the dream. It can also lead to Turiya. So this is a state that can connect to, it's a three-way contact. The next and the very difficult mantra will be explained by Dr. Komal. Dr. Komal, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Mantra 6. Esha Sarveshwaraha, Esha Sarvagna, Esho Antaryami, Esha Yonihi, Sarvasya Prabhavapyayo Hi Bhutanam. He is the Lord of all. He is omniscient. He is the inner controller. He is the source of all, being the ground of origination and dissolution of beings. Atma, associated with entire universe in potential form, is called Ishvara. This is the definition of Ishvara we have to keep in mind when we are studying Mandukya. Atma, associated with the entire universe in the potential form. Prajna, Prajna, and Ishvara are the Atma associated with the sleeper's body and the sleeper's world, respectively. Atma is the ruler of all, because from this Ishvara alone, everything in the waking state evolves. When you go to sleep, everything resolves. This Ishvara has omniscience, not just knowledge of one body and one mind, but the entire knowledge contained in the total universe, the past, present, and even the yet to be discovered future knowledge, all in potential condition. The sleeper's world is the cause of the waker's and dreamer's world, because both of them resolve into the sleeper's world only. The words Lord of all and omniscient means the intelligent cause. The word source means the material cause. Thus, Ishvara alone is both the intelligent and material cause of the entire universe. What is meant by material cause? It's the source of origination of all things and beings, and is the ground of resolution, just as the ocean is the source of all the waves and the ground of resolution of all the waves. Ishvara is the cause for the origination, sustenance, and resolution of the world. In the previous mantra, Atma was called Prajna. In this mantra, the same Atma is called Ishvara. Prajna and Ishvara put together is called the third quarter. That's the third pada. Vishva and Virat, Tejasa and Hiranyagarbha, and Prajna and Ishvara cover the three quarters, three padas. The fourth pada, fourth quarter, is described in the seventh mantra. The first three quarters are Atma associated with Anatma. Three types of Anatma. The Turiyam is Atma dissociated from Anatma, just pure Atma. That will be explained in the seventh mantra of Mandukya Upanishad. And in Mandukya Upanishad, that is the main teaching. The Upanishad says that liberation is possible only through the knowledge of Turiyam, the Atma. The knowledge of the first three quarters is useful but cannot give liberation. Gaudapada introduces his commentary at this point, consolidating the first three quarters. And after those Karikas, again we'll come to the seventh verse, which will deals with Turiyam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Komal, for a nice explanation of a very difficult mantra. For all students of Mandukya, these are two important mantras, and I want you to see how you can break your head to whatever extent to understanding this mantra. In all the Upanishads, and particularly in Kaivalya, where there are so many Mahavakyas, the moment you come to these Mahavakyas, there is always a feel-good effect. And when the highest form of claim comes in Kaivalya, where you claim, Mayeva Sakalam Jatam. Because of me, everything has come into being. My Sarvam Pratishtitam. I, as consciousness, am supporting this whole world. My Sarvam Layam Yati. Everything resolves into me. Tad Brahmadvayam Asmayam Aham. This is a silent claim that we are taught to exclaim and live as Ayam Atma Brahma. In those days, we talk of ourselves as Brahman, not as Ishvara. Ishvara is the creator of this whole world. I do not know how to create this whole world. I'm not responsible for all these problems of the world. And so we tend to dissociate ourselves from Ishvara. But when we come to Mandukya, the story is different. Look at this verse. Dr. Komal has explained it, but I will go again word for word. Yesha. Yesha means the previous verse. Yesha Sarveshwara. Sarveshwa. This is the Lord of everything. Who is the Lord? Prajna. That means the one who goes to sleep. Each one of us is Ishvara, the Lord of everybody. The one who is Sarvagnya, the one who knows everything. Yesha Sarva Antaryami, the one who is the indweller, but who is the controller. Yama, the inner Yama. Yama means the controller of all. Yesha Sarvasya, the one who is the source of all, Prabhava and Pralaya, the one from whom everything comes into being. Who each one of us. Now, there is a beautiful picture when a person goes to sleep between Prajna and Ishvara. Keep this picture in your mind each time when you go to sleep. When you go to sleep, we experience a bliss which is out of this world because you have the bliss of Atmananda, to being one with the Lord. In fact, when you are fast asleep, you are one with the Lord. And that is what the fifth mantra said. But the sixth mantra says, you are not other than the Lord. You are Ishvara itself. Very difficult for us to understand, but this is Mandukya. The words once again, Sarveshwara, Lord of all, Sarvagnya, omniscient, Antaryami, the inner controller, Yoni, the womb of all, Prabhavaha, the originator, and Api Ayu, the one from whom everything dissolves. Now, these are Upanishadic mantras. These Upanishadic mantras are gospel truth. I may not be able to understand, I may not be able to comprehend, but they are true. Let them be true to us. The next mantra, we now come to the Karika. As I said, Dr. Sundar is going to explain this whole mantra Karika business. Dr. Sundar, please.
Hari Om, Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Before going to the first Karika, a quick overview. What are we trying to study here? So essentially, we have the Mandukya Upanishad of 12 mantras, which belongs to the Vedas, Apaurushaya, explained by Gaudapada Acharya as an analysis in his 215 Karikas. Gaudapada Acharya was the guru of Govinda Pada, guru of Adi Shankaracharya. And then we have a third text, which is Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashyam on the 12 mantras and the 215 Karikas. So the Karikas don't go word by word, whereas a Bhashyam goes word by word. So the Karikas themselves, as we have already seen, have 4 portions to it. We are right now in the Agama Prakaranam, and this is a mixture of the 29 Karikas and the mantras of the Upanishads, as we see in the lowermost row. We have already seen that the other parts of the Karikas are the Vaitatya Prakaranam, Advaita Prakaranam, and Alati Shanti Prakaranam. In this next slide, we shall look at the overall structure of the 12 mantras of the Upanishad itself. The first 2 mantras are introductory in nature. They are going to introduce to us 2 types of vichara. The first mantra is going to introduce to us to Omkara vichara, which is going to be elaborated in the mantras 8 to 12. The second mantra is an introduction to Atma vichara, which is already elaborated in the present verses 3 to 6 and the verse 7, which will follow. Now, the second verse said that everything is Brahman and Atma is Brahman. And since Atma is Brahman, making an inquiry into Atma is making an inquiry into this creation. So Atma is not different from me. It is our core essence, our true nature. So essentially, what we are seeing here is, if I can do a self-inquiry, I'm essentially doing an inquiry of the entire creation. So through Atma Vichara, I can know the entire creation. How is this possible? So we have already seen here that the basic principle of the Mandukya Upanishad is that existence of Jagat or existence of any object presupposes a knower. So that means a knower is a higher order of reality and the known Jagat is a lower order of reality. But then the knower, which is body-mind complex, also is a lower order of reality because the knower presupposes a sentient principle. So therefore, we have 3 things here. One is the known, which is the objects or Jagat. Second is the knower, which is the body-mind complex. And the third is the sentient principle, which is consciousness, Chaitanyam or Brahman. So what the Mandukya Upanishad does is it puts together the knower, which is body-mind complex, and the known, which are lower order of reality, because the consciousness presupposes them it says that the knower and the known both are actually anatma. This sentient principle, consciousness alone, is the ultimate satyam, which is Brahman or Atma. So therefore, satyam can be only one. Satyam cannot be multiple things. So therefore, we derived that one satyam, which is Atma, one Atma alone, is in the guise of the knower body-mind complex and the known Jagat. Next, what the Upanishad does is, this knower and known can be seen in three mutually exclusive compartments because we have three states at all the time. Wakeful state, then we have the dream state and the deep sleep state. So the Upanishad divides the anatma portion in all these three states into knower and known. So therefore, the third mantra dealt with the wakeful state where the knower and known are Vishwa and Virat. This is the Pratama Pada of Atma, or the first facet of Atma. Remember, we have already seen that there can be only one Satyam. Therefore, Atma alone is. This Atma alone is therefore in the guise of Vishwa and Virat in the Pratama Pada, or the wakeful state. Then we go to the fourth mantra. This describes the Dvitiya Pada of the Atma, or the second facet of the Atma. So this second facet belongs to the dream state. In the dream state, the knower and the known are the Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha. Again, going by the argument that Satyam is only one. So therefore, that same Atma, which is one Satyam, is in the guise of the knower Taijasa and the known Hiranyagarbha in the Swapna Avastha. Then in the mantras 5 and 6, we go to the Shushupti, or the deep sleep state. In this deep sleep state, the knower and known go by the words Prajna and Ishvara. Again, by the same argument, Atma, which alone is Satyam, in the deep sleep state is in the guise of the knower Prajna and the known Ishvara. So, Atma alone is. So, at this point, Gaudapada Acharya takes a break and he comes in with the first 9 Karikas to explain the mantras 3, 4, and 5 and 6 elaborately. The first of the Karikas is the verse that is allotted to me. And as seen in this next slide, the contents have already been covered in the mantras 3 to 6 earlier. So, Bahish Prajnaha Vibhuhu Vishwadi. So, for this, Pujya Swamiji completes the sentence during Anvaya and says that this is Pratama Pada Bhavati. This has already been explained in the third mantra. So, the knower is Vishwa and the known is Vibhuhu. And Bahish Prajna states that in the wakeful state, one's knowledge is outwardly oriented. Remember that in the wakeful state, my sense organs, my mind are fully awake. Therefore, I am outwardly oriented. And in this state, both the knower, Vishwa, and the Virat are nothing but Atma being in the guise of them, because of the argument we saw earlier. Now, the second line is talking about Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha. And Pujya Swamiji completes the Anvaya by adding Tvitiya Pada Bhavati. And these are referred to as Antaprajna. This is because, remember that this is talking about the dream state. At this point, my gross body is completely resolved. Mind is also partially resolved. So I am open to experiences which are there already in the mind. The Tejasa is the dreamer. Therefore, he is referred to as being internally conscious. The third line refers to the deep sleep state, where the knower and the known are Prajna and Antaryami. So here the gross body, the subtle body, both have resolved. So there is neither externally or outward consciousness, nor there is any internal consciousness. All knowledge, experience, and awareness are in the form of a undifferentiated, dense consciousness, which is called as Ghana Prajna. And the Anvaya is completed for the third by saying Tritiya Pada Bhavati, which is described in the mantras 5 and 6. The interesting part is the 7th mantra discusses Turiya, but Gaudapada Acharya, Swamiji says, out of his being excited about this, already talks about the Turiya, which is part of the 7th mantra here. So, Eka Turiya Eva Tridha Smrita. One Turiya alone is in the guise of the Vishwavirat, Tejasa, Hiranyagarbha, Prajna, Ishvara, in the three states that each of us go through. In this last slide, there are certain additional comments that Adi Shankaracharya makes in his Bhashyam. So he makes a note that these three states are mutually exclusive. When one is in wakeful state, one cannot be in deep and deep states. That's what he means. So this smooth transition from one to another state means that there is an underlying substratum which is holding on to all these three states, which facilitates this smooth transition. And that is the Turiya, which is the substratum for all this. Another point Adi Shankara makes is what is called as Pratyabhijna. Pratyabhijna means when I am in the wakeful state, I do not refer to the dreamer as that dreamer. You say that I, in my dream, saw this. So therefore, there is a link which is happening to the past dreamer to the present waker. Adi Shankara, through analysis, Bhagat Tyaga Lakshana Prayoga, he shows that the past dreamer and the present waker are nothing but the Turiya. And in his Bhashyam, therefore, he says Ekatvam is Siddha, Shuddhatvam of the Turyam is Siddha. He brings in the example of Mahamatsyam. He says, imagine there is a big river in which there is a big fish. Sometimes it goes to the left bank, which is like the Jagrata Avastha. Sometimes it goes to the right bank, which is like the Swapna Avastha. Sometimes it is in the middle of the river, which is like Sushupti Avastha. So all the experiences which are happening at the bank do not belong to the fish. It just merely witnesses those experiences. And therefore, through this example, asangatvam of Atma or Turiya is demonstrated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sundar, for giving us a nice overview of how the Mandukya is admixed with the Karikas and how after the first 6 mantras, so the first 6 mantras are over and you had to explain the first Karika. And this is the first Karika. You will see once the Karikas come, the main Upanishad is in prose form and all these Karikas are in poetic form. Ishva, Taijasa, Prajna, Smritaha. You will see there is a poetry, and that is why when you're chanting these Karikas, it becomes extremely beautiful. And you will see the brilliance in Gaudapada. He's not giving us any new information, but he's classifying Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, and he says of all the three, the most important is the fourth, the Turiya that is coming in and through all these four. We will go to the next Karika, which will be explained by Dr. Sandhya Reddy. Dr. Sandhya, please.
Thank you, sir. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So in Karika 2, we'll just chant it. Dakshinakshi Mukhe Vishwo Manasyantastu Taijasaha Akashe Chahyadi Prajna Sthrida Dehe Vyavastitaha. The one theme that runs through the Karikas is the reality of the non-dual or the birthless Brahman. In the Karika, the Omkara Nirnaya, which we will see later, is actually based on the Vedantic teaching. But the rest of it deals with philosophy that is so profound that it is given the status of an Upanishad. It is the analysis of the Avasthatraya, the three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Excuse me. It is the analysis of the Avasthatraya, the three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, covering all of our experiences in total. Acharya Gaudapada says, Eka eva trida smrita. It is the one alone who is known in the three states, known by three different names. Mandukya Upanishad, the next slide, sir, it is unique in that the fundamental principle, the cause is Satyam and effect is Mithya, is presented differently. Can we have the next slide, sir? Here I, the experiencer, the observer is Satya, and everything that is observed, experienced is Mithya, Anatma, including the body mind. The entire Anatma is Mithya because only the observer can prove the existence of the observer. Atma, the I, consciousness principle, has four facets, as we've just heard Dr. Sundar explained. And verses 3 to 6 deal with 3/4 of the Atma, Vishwa, Taijasa, and Prajna, all of which are really the Turiya. Shankara Bhashyam, the next slide, sir, points out that this verse is intended to show that the threefold experience of Vishwa, Taijasa, and Prajna is realized in the waking or the Jagrat state alone. So they are generally related to the waking dream and deep sleep states, as we have seen. But we can understand what each state is only from the waking state. To understand that the dream and deep sleep are two different states and they have two different characteristics, we need to be awake. So these two become known to the waking consciousness. The topic is introduced by Gaudapada in this Upanishad. It is there in other Upanishads like the Brihadaranyaka and the Chandogya. So Swamiji explains that karma yoga and jnana yoga are the sadhanas that lead us to Atma Jnana. The next slide, sir. There are many types of meditative upasanas, but one type is meditating upon the essential oneness of the individual, that is the microcosm, and the total, that is the macrocosm. So the Aikya upasana of the microcosm, the Vyashti, the Samasti is what is explained in these verses. At all levels, the essential nature of the microcosm, macrocosm is one and the same. And to illustrate this oneness upasana, 3 types of upasana are described in which we forget the name and the form and experience this oneness. So one is the Vishwa Virat Aikya upasana, gross body, the gross prapancha. The Taijasa Hiranyagarbha Aikya upasana, that is the individual in the cosmic mind at the subtle level, and the Prajna Ishvara Aikya upasana at the causal level. The Upanishads talk about various locations for this invocation within ourselves. Although the entire person is the waker, the Upanishad gives particular locations where the waker can be invoked. Dakshinakshi Mukhe Vishwa. Vishwa is invoked in the right eye. Dakshinakshi, the means of perception of gross objects, is the right eye. The right eye represents all the sense organs. Even though the presence of Vishwa is equally felt in all the sense organs, yet the right eye is singled out, as it is supposed to be a more efficient instrument in perception as per the scriptures. In fact, even Sushruta says, Sarvendriyanam Nayanam Pradhanam. I mean, we don't have anything like that in the modern medicine, but Sushruta says that. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also in 4.2 says, the person that is in the right eye is known as Indra, the luminous, effulgent one who is Vaishvanara. And also the Virat Atman, that is the totality of the gross bodies. The perceiver in the sun is the same as the perceiver in the eye. In the subtle body, the mind is more prominent, so that is used to invoke the Taijasa, because Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha are the same form of thoughts. Manasyas antu Taijasa. Then what happens when we are in deep sleep? All our faculties are withdrawn into the Hridayam. Akashe cha hiri prajna. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad states that within our heart is a space where all our sense powers are resolved in deep sleep. Prajna is invoked here. So Vishwa, the perceiver of gross objects, becomes Taijasa when he closes the eyes and thinks in the mind about the gross objects as in dream or memory. Memory is also a form of mental activity, and the impressions of gross external objects, which we perceive in the waking state, become manifest as memory and dream. And when this activity is suppressed or stopped, as the memory goes away, the perceiver in the waking and the dream states is unified with prajna in the space called akasha, which is in the heart. And like Sir described, it's the undifferentiated mass of consciousness. So Swami Paramatmananda says that this micro-macro Aikya Upasana is very important. Because as individuals, we forget that we are part of the larger whole. We lose the larger vision. That is, we think we are separate from the samashti, and in fact, we are not. So when we consider ourselves only as the individual self, that causes the ego and the samsara. So he calls it the ego thinning meditation. So this is the sthana trayam. In these 3 different parts, in the threefold manner, the very same Atma which is located in the Vishwa, the Taijasa, and the Prajna, they are invoked for meditation. Trida Dehi Vyavastita. Hari Om, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya, for a very nice explanation. Now, we are now in the Karikas. And what are the Karikas telling us? The Mandukya Upanishad is not only for vichara or inquiry, but also for upasana. Now, because the Upanishad is so lofty, it is aware that some people may not be able to understand. So for those who cannot understand, various forms of meditations or upasanas are given. Now, where do I locate the waking? It says in the right eye. The eyes, 80% of our sense organs, 80% of our information comes from the eyes. And between the two eyes, the right eye is more. So in your waking state, I want you to see yourself as the right eye or it on the right eye. Now, for the dream, the location is in the mind, and for the deep sleep, it is in the heart. So that is how now these things are not given in the Upanishads. How did you get this right eye for the waker? How did you get the mind for the Taijasa? How did you get the heart for Prajna? That you have to go to Shankara Bhashyam. In Shankara Bhashyam, he will say in which Upanishad all these things are mentioned. Gaudapadacharya has not given it on his own. He has sourced it from the Upanishads, but he has not given us the source. But when you go through the Shankara Bhashyam, you will find. The last Karika for today will be explained by Induji. Indumati, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Here is Karika number 3. Vishvo hi stula bhu nityam taijasa pravivikta bhuk ananda bhuk tata pragnaha tridha bhogam nipodata. Vishwa is indeed the constant experiencer of the gross objects. Taijasa is the experiencer of the subtle objects. And Prajna is the experiencer of Ananda. Know the experiencer to be threefold. Next slide. All these 3 quarters have 3 types of experiences. Vishwa, the waker, experiences the gross material objects of the world that are made up of the 5 elements regularly in every waking state. The dreamer cannot contact the gross material universe because to do so, sense organs must be available. The tangible material world goes away from the dreamer. The dreamer sees, dreams mountain, rivers, etc. that are thought which were in the subconscious mind in the form of vasanas. The vasanas registered in the mind come out in dream. Thus, the dream is subtle vasana-based universe. The dreamer is the experiencer of the subtle thought world. The waker and the dreamer have pleasurable and painful experiences, but the sleeper always experiences happiness. In the next slide, we have, during sleep state, all the koshas, sheaths, except the vital sheath and the bliss sheath are resolved. The vital sheath is operating, keeping the body alive. The mental sheath is resolved with all the emotions resolved. The intellectual sheath is resolved with all types of thoughts resolved. The causal body, the bliss sheath, is present where everything is resolved. It is an undisturbed condition. When we are in causal body, in which there are no disturbances, the Atmananda, which is the original nature of Atma, gets reflected in the calm mind, which is resolved in the causal body. The sleeper is the experiencer of the reflected bliss. In the next slide, we see, thus, Tridha, in threefold manner, Dehe Vyavastitaha, the very same Jiva is located in threefold manner as Vishwa in one place, as Taijasa in the second place, and as Prajna in the third place. This location is for the Atma Upasana purpose. So, thus, Padatrayam Sthanatrayam, and Bhogatrayam means experiences. The threefold experiences are mentioned: Vishwa Sthula Bhuk Bhavati or Sthula Bhokta Bhavati. The waker has got gross experiences because the waker contacts the gross universe, which is not projected by the mind, but it is made up of solid Panchabhuta. And therefore, Sthula Bhuk means Bhokta, Sthula Bhokta, Sthula Bhogaman Vishwaha Bhavati. In the next slide, we see Pravivikta Bhuk Taijasaha. Pravivikta Bhuk means Sukshma Bhokta, Sukshma Vishaya Bhokta, and that is the dreamer, because the dreamer does not contact the Bhautika Prapancha, that is the physical universe. The dreamer contacts the objects which are nothing but crystallized thoughts. So thoughts are intangible, invisible, but in dream, the thought has become tangible, endowed with Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha. Therefore, Sukshma Bhogaha is the Taijasas, the dreamer's Bhogaha. In the next slide, we see that it tells us, then what about the Prajna, the sleeper? Ananda Bhuk Tata Prajnaha. The sleeper enjoys Ananda because all the divisions are removed. Therefore, I am no more a localized person, no more a differentiated person. Everyone loves sleeping because in sleep, we are in Anandam, which is complete Ananda. That is Advaitam. We will be in Advaitam. So, to conclude, Ananda Bhuk Tata Prajnaha. Thus, Tridha Bhogam Nibodhata. We should understand that there are Bhogatrayam, which are Sthula Bhoga, Sukshma Bhoga, and Ananda Bhoga. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Induji, for a nice explanation, and thanks to all the speakers. Shri Gurubhyo Namah.
We have come to the end of today's satsanga, which has evoked our interest and curiosity to know more about Mandukya Upanishad, a surest means of Atma Vidya. Our deep sense of indebtedness to our teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, and grateful thanks to all the speakers for explaining this great Upanishad in a way that we can understand and assimilate. Param Vedanta thanks each one of you for your continued interest in the pursuit of Atma Vidya through our series of sessions, and also for your positive feedback. We meet again on coming Monday, the 3rd of June, 2024, for the 29th session of GIFT, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation. We conclude today's session with our usual Shanti mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Vasudevaya.